Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for another Cricut tutorial. I've had a lot of requests to get back to some sewing with the Cricut Maker videos, so I thought I would do the zipper pouch with tabs. A lot of you have asked me how to put the tabs on zippers and to do a tutorial, so I thought I would do both of these requests in one video and we'll make this zipper pouch with zipper tabs. This is a really basic pouch and it's great for gifts or travel or all sorts of things. So let's jump over to Design Space and I'll show you how to get started. So here we are in Design Space. The first thing we need to do is click New Project. Click Upload. You're going to navigate to where you saved the SVG file that I have provided for you. You can find a link to it in the description below this video. In my case, it's right here on my desktop. It's called Zipper Pouch with Tab Lori. Click Open. Here you can tag it. I'm going to call it Zipper Pouch Sewing. I'm going to put my name, my initials, so that I remember this is my file. And I might put tabs in case I'm looking for a specific one. And then I'm going to click Save. I'm going to click on it and click Insert Images. Now this comes in, it's an SVG, so it comes in sized just the way you need it, but we do need to do a few things to it just to make it ready for Design Space. So the first thing I'm going to do is click right here in the lower left corner, and I'm clicking the percentage down a little bit so that I can get a better look at the whole file. And now while it is still selected, I'm going to right click and click Ungroup. You can also click Ungroup right here at the top of the Layers panel. I'm a right clicker. I like to right click, so that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to hit Ungroup. Now be careful, don't move anything. Go over to the Layers panel and look for these blue layers. These are our stitching lines, and we want the Cricut Maker to write those stitching lines with the fabric marker. So in order to do that, we need to click on the scissor icon right by the blue layer and change it to right. When you change it to right, it's going to ask you, what do you want to write it with? And we're going to scroll down almost to, about 6 or 7 from the bottom and choose Washable Fabric Pen. And we need to do that to each layer. Click on the scissors, click on right, choose Washable Fabric Pen. Click on the scissors, choose right, choose Washable Fabric Pen. Scissors, right, Washable Fabric Pen. You should have 4 layers that you needed to change to right. Now that we have done that, we still need to attach those writing lines to the pattern piece. Right now, Design Space just knows we want it to write those lines, but it doesn't know where we want them to write it. So very carefully, you're going to select each corner. So I'm going to draw a box and I'm just selecting this corner and making sure I catch that line of that one, and I'm going to click Attach. Now you can right click and click Attach, or you can click Attach right down here, but make sure you have just the 2 layers selected. We only have those 2 layers selected, and we're going to click Attach. Now we're going to do the same from this corner. Right click, attach this corner, right click, attach. And right here, make sure you don't grab those yellow squares. Right click, attach. All right, so now Design Space knows we want you to write right on top of those objects. So if we click Make It, we can see our 2 square tabs. We can see Design Space is going to write right on top of this fabric piece. Same here, and same here. And we see it says Draw, Cut, Draw, Cut. But I want to use the 12 by 24 fabric mat so that I can cut both of these pieces out of my 11 by 13 piece of fabric. So all I'm going to do is click right here in the material size by the first green layer, and I'm going to change that to 12 by 24. And that's going to put both of those shapes on my 12 by 24 mat. I'm going to repeat that with the pink layer. Click on the first pink layer, change that to 12 by 24. And now Design Space knows, oh, you're going to cut both of these on one large mat. Now that we have the work completed in Design Space, we need to prepare our fabric before we can cut. So the first thing you're going to need is an acrylic ruler. I'm using the Cricut 12 by 24 acrylic ruler and the Cricut rotary blade cutter. You're also going to need some interfacing. I'm using this interfacing by Heat and Bond. It comes by the yard at your local fabric store, and I'm using a medium weight. You're going to need some scissors, a fabric pen, some coordinating thread, a zipper that is at least 9 inches long, and I'm using this fabric pack from Cricut. I think this is really cute. This is one of their newer releases, and I will have all the products used linked in the description below the video. The first thing you want to do is cut your fabric and your interfacing to approximately 11 by 13. That is if you're going to use a 12 by 24 fabric mat. The Cricut fabric comes pre-cut to 12-inch width, so you just need to cut the length to be at least 13 inches long. So you're going to need two 11 by 13 pieces of fabric, one for your lining and one for your outer fabric. Again, that is if you're using a 12 by 24 mat. You can cut these on a 12 by 12 mat. You'll just cut each piece separately. And you're going to need two pieces of fabric, approximately 3 by 3. And those are going to be the zipper tabs, so you can use either the lining or the outer fabric, or even a third pattern if you like. I'm going to use the lining fabric. Once you have all of your pieces cut to size, the first thing you're going to do is get an ironing surface prepared. You want to iron out any wrinkles in the fabric. Once you have your fabric ironed smoothly, you're going to apply the fusible interfacing to the back side of your outer fabric. So we're applying a 11 by 13 piece of fusible interfacing to the back side of our outer fabric. Now I left my fabric 12 inches wide, so I'm going to make sure and line this up in that upper left corner. We're going to have a little bit of extra on the right because I didn't cut it down to 11 inches. But you want to make sure you have at least 11 by 13 piece of fabric covered in interfacing. Now you put the shiny side of the interfacing down on the back side of the fabric. I prefer to use steam, but follow the directions on your particular interfacing. And I just find steam works best for me. Once you have the fabric fully covered with the interfacing, you're going to place it on your Cricut mat with the interfacing side up. Now the interfacing is side up. The pretty side of the fabric is face down on the mat. We're going to be using the fabric marker, and we want that to write on the back of the fabric. I'm using the Cricut brayer. I find this really helps with getting the fabric to stick down to the mat. You want to make sure that the blade doesn't catch it and everything is stuck down really well and there aren't any wrinkles in the fabric. I'm using cotton fabric, and I chose cotton on the Cricut Design Space software, and I chose more pressure to make up for the difference in the interfacing. You can see I've added the fabric marker. Now on yours, you're not going to have this line across the top. I changed the file so it did not draw that. I didn't like the fact that you can see that through the fabric on your lighter fabrics. But other than that, it will look just like this. And once you've cut that piece out, you're going to load the lining fabric. Again, pretty side down on the mat. It's going to right on the back of the fabric. There is no interfacing on the lining piece. And I'm going to use the brayer again to make sure that I don't have any wrinkles in the fabric and that it is stuck down really well. Now again, I did remove the top line, so yours won't have the top line, but that will be to your benefit. And you'll see why a little bit later in the video. So go ahead and cut out the rest of your pieces. When you're completed, you should have two pieces similar to this in the outer fabric, two pieces just like it in the lining fabric, and two 2 by 2 squares. Now it's time to prepare our zipper. I'm using a 9-inch zipper, but you can use any size you have as long as it's at least 9 inches. The first thing I'm going to do is cut off the end of the zipper opposite of the zipper head, and I'm just cutting off where that stop is. Now be careful that you don't accidentally unzip it. Make sure that zipper head is at the opposite end, because right now there's nothing stopping it from coming off. You're going to grab one of your 2 by 2 squares and fold the edges in slightly. You can go all the way up to halfway in. You've got plenty of room there, but you just need to fold in both of the edges so that you don't have any raw edges on the long side once you fold it in. And then you're going to fold that in half. This is very similar to a method that we use in many of the videos to make a sort of a seam binding. You're going to place the zipper inside that little fold. This is the end that you just cut, and place a clip. Perfect. Now, before we cut off the other end, I want to measure. I'm going to put this down on my mat. And you might find it easier to unzip it or zip it, whichever works. But you want to make sure before you cut the other end off that that zipper head is open a little bit. So what I'm going to do is place this on my mat, and I need to measure down 8 3/4 inches. So each square is an inch. So I'm measuring from the edge, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 3/4, and I'm going to mark it with my fabric pen. This is a Pilot Fusion friction pen, and these are erasable with an iron. I love to use these with my fabric projects. Now, before I cut it, I'm measuring it one more time, and I'm going to zip it just a little bit closer so I can keep these tabs straight. And I'm going to cut it right on that line, but make sure that zipper head is on the opposite side of where you're cutting. It should be towards the other end. Once you have this end of your zipper done, and before we go any further, we need to add the tab to the other end. So we're going to fold this one in the exact same way we did the other one. Fold the sides in and press. Fold that in half and press. And I'm using the Cricut Easy Press mat to press on. You could even use the Easy Press for a lot of this project. And then we're going to place that tab right in the fold just like we did before, and place a clip. You can use a pen, whatever works for you. Binder clip, whatever you have on hand. Now that we have the zipper prepared, I'm just double checking one more time that it is 8 3/4 inches. It is. So you're going to take this over to your sewing machine, and you're going to stitch right at the edge of the tabs towards the inside. So right along this edge, you're going to stitch, and right along that edge. I actually did 2 rows of stitching. I just like the way that looks, and you want to make sure that you catch both the front and the back. And we should be looking something like this. You can see my zipper is, the tabs are sewn. I did 2 rows of stitching. It's kind of hard to see here from this far away. But now I'm just going to fold the zipper in half, and I'm going to mark the center point with a fabric pen. And that's just an easy way to establish the center. Now grab your scissors and go ahead and trim off those tabs so that they are even with the zipper. And it doesn't actually matter. You could leave them in there. It just is more bulk that you don't need at the end. So we're just cutting those so that they're even with the zipper. Just like that. Now go take one of your outer pieces of fabric. And in my case, it's going to be this blue flowered. And we're going to fold that in half to establish where the center line is. You can finger crease it, or you can mark it with your marker. I'm actually going to mark it with my pen. It's a little bit hard to see the crease on this darker cornflower blue fabric. So now we're going to put the zipper with the zipper head facing down, and we're going to match up those center lines. So the center of the zipper should be matching the center of the fabric, and you should have about 3/4 of an inch left on each end of the zipper. And then you're just going to pin that into place. Once you have that pinned into place, put the zipper foot on your sewing machine and sew right along the edge of that zipper from end to end. Again, make sure the zipper is face down. Okay, it should be looking just like this. You can lift it up and see sort of how it's going to look. If everything looks good, now you're going to grab one of your lining pieces. And again, yours is not going to have that line across the top, and you don't want it because it's going to show up later if you're using a lighter fabric. So that's fine, but just make sure that you line that fabric up exactly with the piece underneath. So your squares at the bottom should be lining up, the corners, the edges, and just clip that into place. Once you have that clipped into place, flip it over and you're going to stitch right on top of that line that you stitched previously. You can do those two steps in the same step if you want, but I find it just makes a nicer, cleaner application to apply the lining and the outer fabric separately. So it should be looking like this when you get done stitching. And you can see here, this is why I decided to remove that line, because I noticed that you can see this blue line when you flip the lining over. I can still see this because that's not really where you're stitching when you're putting the zipper in. It's a little bit further down. You can remove some of the markings with a baby wipe, which is what I was doing. But again, that's why I removed that blue line, because I could see it through the fabric and I didn't like that. The others blue lines will be covered up because they will be stitching lines. So you're going to push your fabric and your lining together. The wrong sides should be together and the zipper facing out like this. And you want to take it to your ironing surface and press those as flat as you can, and then take it over to the sewing machine and top stitch right along that top edge. So you can see here I stitched right along that top edge, and that's going to keep that fabric from bunching up and getting caught in the zipper. So now you're going to turn the zipper sandwich over and line it up with that other outer fabric. Again, we're lining up the edges of the fabric, making sure everything stays square and in place. Might find it easier to close that zipper up. I move the zipper as I'm sewing. I leave the presser foot or the needle down, lift the presser foot up, and move the zipper as I'm sewing the zipper end to get it out of the way. Otherwise, your stitching can get a little bit wonky. So you can see here, I'm just making sure that this is lined up. I still have that 3/4 inch on the sides between the tab and the edge of the fabric. I'm just making sure everything is still in alignment. Sometimes things can shift a little bit as you're sewing. And you're going to sew right along that edge. Once you've sewn along that edge, it should look just like this. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to put that lining piece face down right on top and clip it into place. And once again, yours will not have that blue line. So if you're looking at it and thinking it looks funny, flip it over and stitch right along that same stitching line again. All right, so now we have this funny looking sandwich. You should have an outer and a lining on each side. Your lining should be pretty side facing up, and your outer is pretty side facing up when you flip it over. The wrong sides of the two fabrics are facing each other on each side. Make sure you have it all the way opened up. You're going to press that fabric flat again and top stitch on the opposite side of the zipper. Once your top stitching is done, it should look something like this. You want to lay it flat so you have a lining and an outer fabric on each side with the zipper in the middle. You're going to lift those two lining pieces up and pull the two outer pieces together so that you have the two lining pieces pretty sides together. And I'm going to mark those with a pen about 1 inch or 2 from the edge, 1.5 inches maybe. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it's enough that you're going to be able to turn this right side out through that hole. And then make sure you unzip the zipper. Very, very important. Unzip that zipper. And then you're going to pin or clip the rest of the pouch together, making sure that those corners and everything is lined up nice and evenly. When you get to those seams on the side, you just want to reach in there and make sure those are lined up together. That makes a big difference in how your finished bag is going to look. Line those two seams up and clip. If you need to let out any slack, let it go out on the sides. And I'm doing the same on the opposite end. Just line those up and finish clipping. Once it's all clipped, you're going to sew right along this blue line, go from one end to the other, right off the edge of the fabric. Sew down both of the sides, and then on this end, you're just going to sew up to the pin. Don't sew between the pins, and sew on the other end. So you're going to sew off the two ends, but not in the middle. And make sure you're sewing from edge to edge of the fabric, even though the line is short a little bit. Sew right off the edge of the fabric. And you can see I have mine sewn. I've sewn all the sides except for the top. I left that opening between the two pins. Everything else is sewn edge to edge. You do not sew in those squares. Now we're going to box the corners. You're going to open up those squares. You're going to push one seam left and one seam right. Line that up. Clip it. And move to the next one. Now I'll zoom in on the next one. Okay, so you're going to open up the square. Put one seam to the left, one to the right, clip, and then you're going to sew about 1/4 of an inch right across that straight edge. And you're going to repeat that for all 4 corners. Open up the corner, seam to the left, to the right, clip, and then sew 1/4 inch across that straight edge once you have all 4 done. I like to clip them all and then just sew all 4 at once. So I'll let you see this one more time. Open up that corner. This is the same thing we did with the other box corners, except for we used a triangle and did it that way. I think this makes a little bit neater of a corner, and it makes sure everything turns out exactly the same, but you can use either method. So you're going to go ahead and sew all 4 corners. Now you can see I have all 4 corners sewn, and we have that opening that we left in the bottom of the lining. You want to find that and turn your bag right side out. And it takes a little bit of finagling, but you can get it. As you're turning it right side out, you want to reach inside and make sure that those box corners are nice and pressed out. I'm reaching inside that hole in the lining still and making sure everything is pressed out. Push your corners out up in the corner by the zipper where your zipper tabs are. Those should push out nice. Once you have that turned right side out, you're just going to pull that lining back out, and it should naturally fold in upon itself. You might have to push out your corners again to get everything to line back up. And then if you just kind of pull on it, those corners or the edges will fold in on themselves, and you're just going to stitch right along that edge to sew that close. It's on the inside of the bag. Nobody's going to see it. If you want to, you could use hem tape and fuse it together, but I don't mind just stitching it. And once it's all stitched, you're just going to stuff the lining back in and you're done. There's your zipper pouch. So that's a basic lined zipper pouch with zipper tabs. This is a really versatile bag. You can make it any size you want. You can, resize this in Design Space or just cut out your squares and cut out the little corners by hand. Either way works just fine. I think the zipper tabs makes a really nice finish on the bags. You could embroider these. You could add HTV to these. Lots of ideas, great ideas for gifts. So again, all the products are linked in the description below the video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, don't forget to click notifications, and you guys never stop making. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.